Did you know that 19 out of 20 people who set New Year resolutions abandon them by the end of January? Why is this? Do you have any theories? In this episode of Mind Hacks TV, we'll explore why we can't change habits with motivation and willpower alone, and the one technique that actually works to create new habits and stick to them consistently over time: the habit loop. Why do we set so many goals but then forget about them? We say we're gonna work out more, eat healthier, and spend our time productively. And when we set these goals, we have the best intentions and we start full of motivation. But over time, that initial motivation fades and we fall back into our old default habits. When the motivation runs out, we try using willpower. We force ourselves to do the things we feel we should. And this can work well sometimes when we're feeling on top of the world. But when we're tired or mentally drained after a stressful day at work, we just don't have enough fuel left in the tank to force ourselves to do things that require so much effort. And we're very good at talking ourselves out of them. There's really never a lack of reasons. I didn't sleep well last night. I'm tired. I shouldn't work out when I'm tired. I'll work out tomorrow. But then tomorrow becomes next week, the week after, and before we know it, we're back into our old patterns, doing the same things, thinking the same thoughts, and feeling the same ways. Motivation and willpower are inconsistent, and trying to create consistent habits based on something inconsistent is doomed to fail. And even though all the evidence shows that motivation and willpower haven't worked for us in the past, we keep setting goals and telling ourselves that this time it will be different. But it won't. We need a strategy, and positive thinking isn't a strategy. So, what is the best strategy to create lasting positive change in our lives? How can we replace old unhealthy habits with new healthy ones? To create new habits that stick over time, it's essential that we understand how our mind works. Here's the thing: we don't have one mind, we have two: our conscious mind and our subconscious mind. Our conscious mind is our logical, analytical, thinking mind. This is the part of the mind able to visualize the best version of ourselves and make the right decisions to get there. Our conscious mind is the part of us that wants change. The subconscious mind, on the other hand, doesn't like change. This is our habitual mind. It's the part of the mind running the same repetitive programs every single day. We wake up, make coffee, brush our teeth, leave the house, drive to work. None of these activities require any conscious thought. They just happen in autopilot. And there's nothing wrong with this. Our minds have evolved to conserve energy, and we do so by creating automatic responses to triggers in our life. Imagine how hard life would be if each morning we had to figure out how to make coffee or how to drive a car. Our subconscious mind allows us to launch the Make Coffee program without even thinking about it. But this is a real challenge. Our subconscious mind is in charge over 90% of the time. That means that 90% of our mental processes are repetitive, habitual patterns. The latest research in the field of neuroscience shows that more than 90% of the thoughts we have each day are the same thoughts we had the day before. The same thoughts then trigger the same emotions. The same emotions lead to the same decisions. The same decisions produce the same behaviors. And the same behaviors create the same reality. So, although our conscious mind wants to create a new reality, our subconscious programs keep repeating the same old patterns. Not only is the subconscious mind in charge 90% of the time, but it receives and processes information almost twice as fast as the conscious mind. So before we're even conscious of a decision we need to make, our subconscious mind has already made this decision for us. This is why we can consciously decide that we're gonna be more sociable and make new friends, but then we go to a party and we're surrounded by people we don't know. So we feel uncomfortable and we take out our phones and start scrolling social media. We don't even think about it. We do it because we're out of our comfort zone and this is what's familiar to us. Buddhists use the analogy of the elephant and the rider to explain how the subconscious mind is significantly more powerful than the conscious mind. If I ride an elephant, I feel like I'm in charge. But the truth is that the elephant can go wherever it wants at any time, and I have no way to control it. So the solution isn't to constantly battle the elephant to force it to go in a certain direction. The solution is to train the elephant so it wants to go in the direction I want on its own without any effort on my part. So how exactly do we do this? How do we program our subconscious mind so our desired habits become our default ones? Subconscious programs are just like computer programs. They work based on a simple mechanism known as the feedback loop, which is what inspired me to call this habit-changing formula the habit loop. Programs have two components: triggers and responses. For example, feeling anxious around people we don't know is a trigger, and picking up our phones is a response. Triggers and responses interact with each other and co-create one another. Information flows both ways. The act of interpreting triggers is called perception. The act of responding to these perceptions is called creation, because this is what creates our reality. Triggers are objective, but perceptions are subjective because they're our own personal interpretation of an external reality. For example, imagine that Jack and Jane are stuck in traffic in different cars. They're both experiencing this same external reality. But whereas Jack is furious because he's feeling he's wasting valuable time, Jane is happy because now she has extra time to listen to her favorite podcast and learn something new. Okay, now let's talk about creation. Creation is what we do, what we think, and what we feel about our perceptions. It's called creation because this is how we create both our external reality and our internal reality. When we're stuck in traffic and see it as an opportunity to learn something new, we're acquiring a new skill that's moving us closer to our goal of advancing in our careers. This is our external reality. But this response also makes us feel positive about our day. And this is what we call our internal reality. So with every action we take, every story we tell ourselves, and every emotion we feel, we create both our external and internal reality. This new reality then becomes a trigger for the next situation we face in our lives, so this cycle repeats over and over again. For example, feeling positive about our day makes it more likely for our coworkers to want to help us succeed. And the skill we just acquired makes us better at our jobs. So as we become more successful, we feel more confident. More confidence then leads to more success, which leads to more confidence, more success, and so on. See how it works? This is why creating new habits seems really hard at first, but then it becomes significantly easier and easier. As our external reality improves, we're more and more inspired to continue going in the same direction. This is a phenomenon I call the force. The force shapes not only our external reality, but also our mind through a principle known as neuroplasticity. Neuroscientists love saying that neurons that fire together wire together. We have over 2 billion neurons that interact with each other, forming over 1 trillion neural connections. For example, every time we perceive being stuck in traffic as an opportunity to learn something new, we reinforce the neural connection between that trigger and that response. If we keep doing this, it will eventually become our default response and require no effort on our part. Neural connections become stronger when we activate them and weaker when we don't. When we activate a certain response, it strengthens that neural connection. But when we stop activating that connection, it gets weaker and eventually becomes inactive. And this is known as neural decay. Think about this as carving paths in a very dense forest. The first time you go from A to B, we have to use a machete to cut out all the vegetation on our path. And this takes a lot of work. After that, we can walk the same path much more easily. But if we don't walk that path for a while, the vegetation will start growing again and the forest will take over. So we identified that there are 4 elements in habit: a trigger, a response, a perception, and a creation. This means that we have 4 different ways to hack our subconscious mind to turn our desired behaviors into our default ones. 1, we can optimize our environment to see more of the triggers that lead to desired behaviors and less of the triggers that lead to undesired behaviors. 2, we can optimize our response to the triggers that we experience in our lives. We can consciously choose to create better responses that lead to a healthier, happier, and more successful life. 3, we can calibrate our perception. We do this by replacing false, limiting beliefs with more accurate representations of reality. By reframing the stories we tell ourselves, we stop perceiving ourselves as victims of our environment and start seeing ourselves as creators of our reality. 4, we can calibrate our creation. We start by analyzing whether our responses have been optimal, or how we can create more skillful responses next time a similar situation arises. We also diagnose whether our program responses are producing the results and internal states we were expecting, and we course correct as needed. Not all the changes we want to see in our life require that we tweak all 4 levers. I found that most of the time, adjusting one lever is really all we need, but it's essential that we understand all 4 of them so we can tell without a doubt which one we need to tweak in a given situation. My goal for today is to show you what these 4 levers are so you can understand the possibilities available to you. In the next 4 episodes, I'm going to go deeper into the specific techniques to optimize each of the 4 levers. In episode 2, we'll focus on triggers. I'll walk you over the checklist that I use personally to optimize my environment and set myself up for success every time I create a new goal. I found that getting this part right is at least half the battle. In episode 3, we'll talk about programming subconscious responses. I'll show you how to program your subconscious mind using a technique I call projected reality, which is when we rehearse in our minds how to respond to given situations, so when they present themselves in real life, the right choices happen in autopilot without any effort on our end. If you tried doing affirmations in the past and discovered that they don't really work in the long term, this episode will help you understand why that's the case and what to do instead. I'll show you why focusing on changing actions alone never works, and why we need to actually change the stories and emotions that we feel and think so we can actually rewire our brain. In episode 4, we'll talk about perceptions. We'll go over the most common ways we distort our subjective reality so we can compensate for them and get a much more accurate view of how things actually are. We're all diluted to some degree, so understanding the most common tricks our mind plays on us helps us produce the most appropriate response in every situation. Finally, in episode 5, which is the last one in this series, we'll learn how to quickly diagnose the problems blocking change from happening and how to update our programs with newer, more effective versions of them. By now, you know more about your subconscious mind than 99.99% of people. Even if you never watch another episode of Mind Hacks, you'll start noticing in your own experience the many different ways you can tweak the 4 levers in the habit loop to create the results you want in every area of your life. If you have any questions, please post them below and I'll make sure to answer them. If there's anything specific you want me to address in the next 4 episodes in this series, please let me know in the comments. If you feel like doing something for me, please like this video so YouTube knows that you found it useful and shows it to other people looking to change habits in their lives. I'm Zeke CAMUSIO and this is Mind Hacks TV. See you next week with a new Mind Hack.